Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence can make people? We live in a world where every second of conversation feels like it has to be filled, like dead air is dangerous. Most people can't stand it. That's why silence is such a powerful tool. In the courtroom, attorneys use this better than anyone. They'll ask a witness a difficult question and then stop talking. And then they wait. And that wait can feel like forever. What happens in that silence is almost predictable. The witness gets nervous, they start rambling, and they say more than they ever intended. That's the beauty of the pause. It's not just a lack of words, it's pressure, it's presence, and it's power. Now, let's step out of the courtroom and into your everyday life. Think about the last argument you had with someone close to you. Maybe it was your spouse, a friend, or even your boss. They said something sharp, maybe even unfair, and your first instinct was probably to fire right back. That's normal. We're wired to defend ourselves instantly. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused? Imagine someone throws an insult your way. You never listened to me. Instead of jumping into defense mode, that's not true, I always listen. You stop. You let the words hang in the air. You breathe. That silence does two things immediately. It keeps you from saying something you'll regret, and it makes the other person suddenly aware of how strong their words sounded. Many times, they'll soften, backtrack, or even correct themselves without you saying a single word. The pause works because silence feels heavier than noise. People rush to fill it. When you're calm enough to hold the silence, you show strength. You're telling the other person without saying it, I'm not rattled. I'm not desperate to defend myself. I'm listening and I'm in control. That kind of presence is magnetic. It changes the tone of the conversation without you needing to fight for it. Here's another reason the pause matters. It gives you time to think. In heated conversations, words fly faster than thoughts. You've probably had moments where you said something instantly and regretted it seconds later. Silence is your built-in filter. It gives your brain space to process and decide whether what you're about to say is helpful or harmful. And here's the truth. In almost every argument, the first response you feel like saying isn't the one that will lead to peace or resolution. The pause protects you from yourself. I'll give you an example. A client once told me about a conversation with his teenage son. His son was angry, frustrated, and shouted, "You don't care about me." Now for a parent, that hits deep. The natural instinct is to shout back, "Of course I care about you, don't say that." But instead, he paused. He let his son's words sit in the silence. The son kept talking, kept pouring out feelings, and within a minute, his real fear came out. "You don't care about me, because you're always at work." That silence created the space for truth. And only then could the father address what was really going on. Without that pause, it would have just been two people shouting past each other. The pause isn't just useful in conflicts, it's powerful in persuasion too. Think about negotiations, whether in business or even deciding where to go for dinner. When you make a point, don't rush to fill the air. Let it hang. If you say, "I think this is the best option," and then go silent, the other person feels the weight of your words. They start considering, reflecting, maybe even second-guessing their resistance. If instead you rush to pile on more reasons, you look desperate to prove your case, and desperation never persuades. Silence makes your words land harder because it gives them room to echo. And here's something subtle. The pause also communicates respect. When you pause after someone speaks, you show that you're actually considering their words instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. People feel heard in those moments. And when people feel heard, they're far more likely to listen to you in return. The pause creates balance where there could have been a battle. Of course, pausing takes practice. At first, it feels awkward. You'll want to jump in, fill the gap, explain yourself. Resist it. Count to 3 in your head if you have to. Breathe. Look calm. You'll notice that while those 3 seconds feel like an eternity to you, to the other person it feels like a calm confidence they can't ignore. Over time, it becomes second nature, and you'll wonder how you ever handled conversations without it. So the next time someone throws you a sharp comment, resist the urge to fight back immediately. Pause. Breathe. Let silence do some of the work for you. You'll find that you don't always have to win with words. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Every conversation is a story. The problem is, if you don't tell it, someone else will tell it for you, and you may not like the version they choose. That's why lawyers never let a jury hear evidence without giving them a frame first. They don't just let information float in the air, open to interpretation. They tell the jury what it means before the other side gets a chance. If a witness has a flaw in their testimony, the lawyer points it out before the opposition can spin it. That way, when the jury hears it, they already see it through the lawyer's lens. This is called framing, and outside of the courtroom, Framing might be one of the most valuable tools you can use in your everyday conversations. Think about an argument with your partner. They walk in upset and say, "You don't care about me." If you respond without framing, you're already on defense. The story has been set and you're playing catch up. But if you frame first, the entire tone changes. You could say something like, "I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing, because I do care about you deeply. So tell me where this is coming from." Now you've framed the conversation, your care isn't in question. The focus is on the misunderstanding. That frame keeps the conversation from spiraling into accusations and hurtful back and forth. Framing is about taking control of meaning. Words by themselves are neutral. It's the context that gives them power. If you don't set the context, the other person will. For example, imagine you're in a meeting at work and someone criticizes your idea. If you jump straight into defense, everyone else in the room frames you as someone under attack. But if you frame it first, that's a fair concern. Let's look at it from another angle. Suddenly, you're not the victim of criticism. You're the leader guiding the conversation. You've just shifted the story from defense to authority. The beauty of framing is that it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as starting with phrases like, "Here's how I see it. What matters most to me here is," or, "Before we get too deep, let's agree on what we're actually talking about." These statements set the stage. They tell the other person what the conversation is about before emotions hijack the meaning. Without framing, conversations get hijacked quickly. One person raises their voice, the other follows, and suddenly the original issue disappears under a pile of insults and side arguments. But with framing, you hold the thread of the conversation, and you make sure it stays tied to the real issue. I'll give you a simple example from everyday life. Let's say you're running late to meet a friend, and they're frustrated. If you just say, "I'm sorry I'm late," you're letting them frame the conversation around your mistake. But if you frame it first, "I know being late can feel disrespectful, and I don't want you to feel like your time doesn't matter to me." You've reframed the situation. Now it's not about your lateness, it's about respect, and you've made it clear you value them. That doesn't erase the fact you were late, but it changes the story from negligence to care. That's the power of framing. It shapes the emotional lens. Framing also works incredibly well in high emotion situations. When people are upset, they often exaggerate. "You always do this. You never listen. You don't care." Those words are absolute, but they're rarely true. If you react without framing, you'll either fight those absolutes, "I don't always do this," or you'll feel crushed under them. But if you frame, you can shift the conversation into reality. "I hear that you're frustrated, and I want to understand what's making you feel like this right now." Suddenly the frame isn't, "You never listen." It's, "You're upset right now, and we can figure out why." That difference changes the entire trajectory of the conversation. Framing also works in positive ways. Let's say you're about to give feedback to someone at work or at home. If you jump straight into the feedback, the other person may hear it as criticism. But if you frame it first, "I'm sharing this because I really believe in your potential, and I want to help you grow," the feedback lands as support, not attack. You've created a safe frame before the words even leave your mouth. Here's the truth: conversations are never just about the words spoken. They're about the lens through which those words are seen. And the first person to set the lens usually wins. That doesn't mean you manipulate people. It means you guide them toward clarity instead of confusion, toward resolution instead of escalation. But framing takes awareness. It requires slowing down enough to notice what story is about to form and stepping in to guide it. At first, it might feel forced, but soon it becomes second nature. You'll start noticing opportunities everywhere: when your partner misinterprets your actions, when your coworker assumes the worst, when your child gets frustrated. Instead of letting their frame run the show, you'll calmly provide one that leads to understanding. So, the next time you step into a conversation that feels tense or confusing, don't rush to react. Take a breath and set the frame. Tell the other person how you want the story to be seen. Because if you don't, they will. And the story they choose may not be one you want to live in. Framing is not about control, it's about clarity. It's about creating a conversation that moves forward instead of one that spins out of control. And when you master it, you'll realize that you don't have to win arguments. You just have to guide the story. One of the smartest things a lawyer learns early on is this: you don't win by talking the most. You win by asking the right questions. Questions shift the weight of the conversation. They take the focus off of you and put it back on the other person, and that single shift can change everything. In the courtroom, when a lawyer questions a witness, notice what happens. The lawyer isn't standing there defending themselves, explaining, or justifying. They're calmly asking, guiding, pulling the truth out piece by piece. The power isn't in proving themselves. It's in leading the other person to reveal what's already there. That's the question trick. Now think about how most of us handle everyday arguments. Someone comes at us with an accusation, and what do? We defend, we argue, we throw facts, excuses, explanations, and sometimes even insults right back. But here's the problem: the moment you start defending yourself, you've already lost ground. You've agreed to play on their battlefield, and on their battlefield you're always scrambling. But when you use questions, you flip the battlefield. You make them explain. You make them think. You take the fire out of the moment because instead of clashing, you're guiding. Let's imagine a conversation with a coworker who says, "You never pull your weight on this project." Most people would snap back, "That's not true. I've been doing my part." But notice how defensive that sounds. It doesn't calm the tension, it feeds it. Now let's see what happens if you use a question. You could say, "What makes you feel that way?" Suddenly, instead of you scrambling to defend, they have to explain. Maybe they'll point to something specific. Maybe they'll realize they were exaggerating. Or maybe they'll calm down once they actually put words to their frustration. Whatever the case, you've just bought yourself clarity instead of conflict. Questions are powerful because they lower walls. When people are angry, their defenses are high. They're ready for a fight. If you fight back, their wall gets taller. But a question slips through the cracks. A question doesn't attack. It invites, it says, "I'm not here to fight you, I'm here to understand you." And when people feel understood, even just a little, their defenses start to soften. That's when real conversations can begin. Here's another example. Imagine you're in an argument with your partner and they say, "You never care about what I want." If you argue, you're in trouble. If you defend, you're in trouble. But if you ask, "What do you feel I haven't cared about recently?" You've reframed the conversation. You're not accepting the blanket accusation, but you're not denying it either. You're asking for clarity, and clarity is what emotions fear the most. Emotions like to speak in absolutes. Always, never, everything. Questions bring those absolutes back down to earth. They make the other person pinpoint the real issue. And once the real issue is on the table, you can actually address it. Questions also make you look calm and confident. Think about it. Who looks more in control, the person frantically defending themselves, or the person calmly asking questions? The one asking the questions looks like they're leading, not following. They're shaping the flow of the conversation, not reacting to it. That's why great leaders ask more questions than they give answers. They don't rush to prove themselves. They guide people into proving the point for them. This doesn't mean you ask questions sarcastically or as weapons. The tone matters. A sarcastic, "Really? That's what you think?" isn't a real question. It's an attack wearing a mask. But a genuine, calm, open-ended question like, "Can you help me understand what you mean?" changes the entire emotional temperature of the room. Your tone of curiosity is what makes the question powerful. Without curiosity, the question just sounds like a trick. With curiosity, the question becomes a bridge. One of the best things about questions is that they put time on your side. When you're asked something aggressive, your emotions spike. If you answer immediately, you're answering with emotion, not wisdom. But if you ask a question back, you buy yourself space. While they're answering, you're breathing. You're collecting yourself. You're giving your brain time to catch up. And often, by the time they finish answering, you're calm enough to respond wisely instead of impulsively. Here's something else questions do. They reveal hidden truths. Sometimes what someone says first isn't really the issue. If you keep asking gentle questions layer by layer, you get to the core. A child says, "I hate school." If you argue, you're stuck. But if you ask, "What makes you say that?" And then, "What's the hardest part for you?" Eventually you'll find it's not school they hate. It's that they feel left out at lunch or overwhelmed with homework. The real truth only comes out because of questions. The next time you're tempted to argue, stop. Don't defend, don't attack, don't scramble. Ask. Ask calmly, ask curiously, ask with the goal of understanding. You'll notice the temperature in the conversation drops. The other person does more of the talking, and often, they even talk themselves out of their own anger. That's the beauty of the question trick. It takes the fight out of the fight without you having to push back. It makes the other person reveal their truth instead of you trying to force yours. And once you master it, you'll find that questions don't just win arguments, they build connections. Arguments often go off track. You start talking about one issue, but 5 minutes later, you're in a completely different battlefield, fighting about things that weren't even part of the original problem. That's how conversations spiral. Someone makes a comment that stings, you respond emotionally, they bring up something from the past, you bring up something else, and before you know it, you're not solving anything. You're just trading shots. Lawyers know this better than anyone. In the courtroom, when a witness, or even the opposing attorney, tries to drag the discussion away from the main point, the skilled lawyer doesn't take the bait. They don't let the whole trial get lost in distractions, they redirect. They bring everyone back to the issue that matters. That's the redirect trick, and it can save you from endless arguments in everyday life. Picture this. You're talking with your partner about something simple, like forgetting to take the trash out. Suddenly, it shifts. You never help around the house. You're just like your father. Now, you're not talking about the trash anymore. You're in an entirely different fight. If you follow that detour, the argument will grow legs and run wild. But if you redirect calmly, not angrily, you can bring it back. You could say, I hear that you're frustrated, and we can talk about the bigger picture later, but right now, let's stay on the trash issue. That's redirecting. You're not ignoring their feelings, but you're refusing to chase every side road that leads to chaos. Redirecting is powerful because people in heated conversations often throw things at you just to get a reaction. Maybe they don't mean to, maybe it's just the emotion spilling over. But either way, if you chase every comment, you're going to end up exhausted. Redirecting is like holding the steering wheel steady when the road gets bumpy. The car wants to swerve, but you guide it back. You don't jerk it harshly. You just calmly steer it where it needs to go. Now, some people might hear this and think redirecting is the same as avoiding. It's not. Avoiding is pretending the issue doesn't exist. Redirecting is choosing not to get lost in what doesn't matter right now so you can actually solve what does. If you avoid, you push things under the rug. If you redirect, you're saying, let's stay here until we finish this and then we can deal with the rest. One keeps you stuck, the other moves you forward. This trick also works beautifully when people try to push your buttons. Say you're in a meeting and someone makes a sarcastic jab at you, completely unrelated to the discussion. The natural response is to defend yourself or fire back, but that's exactly what they want. They want to pull you into the weeds. Redirecting sounds like this. That's interesting, but let's focus on the numbers we're discussing. Suddenly, their attempt to derail you doesn't work. You've shown composure, and you've kept control of the conversation. That's strength without aggression. Here's why redirecting matters so much. Arguments are fueled by momentum. Once you go down a negative path, each new point adds fuel to the fire. But when you redirect, you cut off the fuel supply. You slow the momentum. You're saying, we're not going to make this bigger than it is. We're staying right here until we handle it. That shift can take a heated situation and cool it down faster than you'd expect. I'll give you another everyday example. Imagine you're talking with your teenager about finishing homework. Instead of sticking to the point, they say, you don't understand me. You never let me do anything fun. If you chase that comment, you're about to have a 2-hour fight about parenting, freedom, and respect. But if you redirect gently, you could say, we can talk about freedom later, but right now, I just need to know if the homework's done. That one sentence can keep the discussion grounded. Redirecting doesn't mean ignoring their emotions. It means saving the big talk for the right time, instead of letting it derail everything. There's also something deeply respectful about redirecting. When you refuse to let a conversation spiral, you're protecting both yourself and the other person from wasting energy on side battles. You're creating a structure, a path, where resolution is possible. Without that, conversations can turn into blame games that leave both people hurt and nothing solved. Redirecting says, I value this conversation enough to keep it focused. Of course, redirecting takes discipline. Emotions tempt us to follow every jab, every accusation, every exaggerated comment. It feels good in the moment to fight back, to defend, to bring up your own list of grievances. But in the long run, those detours never lead anywhere productive. The real skill is holding back the urge to chase and calmly guiding the conversation back to where it matters. And when you do it enough times, people start to notice. They start to respect that you don't get dragged into drama. You become the person who can steer tough conversations instead of being pulled around by them. So the next time you find yourself in a heated exchange and the other person throws a curveball, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this the real issue or is this a distraction? If it's a distraction, redirect. Bring it back. Keep the focus where it belongs. Because in the end, the goal of a conversation isn't to see who can dig up the most dirt or who can score the sharpest comeback. The goal is resolution, understanding, progress, and you'll only get there if you know how to steer. Redirecting is the way you keep the wheel in your hands. It's how you stop arguments from running wild and and make sure they lead somewhere worth going. Confidence is one of those things you can't fake for long, but when you carry it, everyone feels it. In a courtroom, confidence is as important as evidence. A lawyer could have the strongest argument in the world, but if they deliver it timidly, hesitantly, with eyes down and shoulders slumped, the jury won't believe them. Why? Because people don't just listen to words, they read presence. They feel energy. And in everyday life, it's no different. Conversations aren't won only by logic. They're influenced by how confident you appear when you speak. That's the confidence trick. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean steamrolling people with volume or acting like you're always right. True confidence is quiet, steady, unshakable. It's the way you sit up straight, the way your tone doesn't rise with panic, the way you hold eye contact long enough to show you're grounded, but not so long it feels like a stare down. It's the way you leave pauses without rushing to fill them. These signals tell the other person, I am steady. I'm not afraid. I'm not here to fight, but I won't crumble either. That presence alone can change how people respond to you. Think about the last time you argued with someone who got visibly flustered. Their voice cracked, their words stumbled, maybe their hands fidgeted. Even if they were making valid points, didn't a part of you feel like they were losing ground just because of how nervous they looked? That's how much confidence matters. Now flip it. Imagine someone calmly stating their point, not raising their voice, not reacting to jabs, just holding themselves steady. Even if you disagreed with them, you'd feel that respect. You'd feel that they believed in their stance. That's what confidence does. It earns respect before the words even sink in. Confidence also creates space. When you carry yourself with calm assurance, you don't feel the need to fill every silence with nervous chatter. You don't rush to explain yourself 10 different ways. You say what you mean, you stop, and you let the words land. That silence doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look strong. It makes people lean in, waiting for what you'll say next. In the courtroom, lawyers do this masterfully. They deliver a line, pause, and let the jury sit with it. In daily conversations, you can do the same. Instead of over-explaining, you state your truth simply, then stop. That quiet confidence often speaks louder than a 10-minute defense. There's another layer here. Confidence changes how people remember you. Long after a conversation is over, people may not recall every word, but they will remember how you made them feel. If you came across nervous, apologetic, or defensive, that feeling sticks. If you came across grounded, calm, and sure, that sticks too. And when people feel your steadiness, they trust you more. They believe you more. Sometimes they even follow your lead without realizing why. But here's something important. Confidence isn't about having all the answers. You don't need to know everything to carry yourself with authority. In fact, some of the most confident people are the ones who can say, I don't know, but I'll find out. Why? Because they're not afraid of looking imperfect. They don't see uncertainty as weakness. They see it as honesty. And honesty, delivered with calm assurance, builds far more credibility than pretending you have all the answers. Confidence also comes through your body before it comes through your words. Stand tall, not stiff. Shoulders relaxed but not slouched. Breathe deeply instead of shallow, rushed breaths. When someone challenges you, resist the urge to cross your arms or shrink back. Keep your posture open. These are small signals, but they speak volumes. The person in front of you may not consciously notice them, but subconsciously they'll feel it. They'll feel the difference between someone crumbling under pressure and someone holding their ground with quiet strength. And let's be clear, confidence isn't something you just switch on when the moment comes. It's built long before the argument happens. It's built by keeping promises to yourself, by practicing calm responses, by preparing your mind to stay steady. Every time you keep your word, even in small things, you build a little more self-respect. And that self-respect shows up in your conversations as confidence. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. In heated discussions, confidence is often the difference between escalation and resolution. If both people get defensive, the argument explodes. But if one person stays calm, steady, sure, it changes the energy. It doesn't guarantee agreement, but it prevents chaos. Confidence is contagious. When you show it, others often mirror it back. And that creates a space where real listening can happen. So when you step into your next difficult conversation, remember this: your words matter, but your presence matters more. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to defend every detail to be respected. You just need to carry yourself with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth, who doesn't fear silence, who believes in what they're saying. That's the trick. Confidence isn't about overpowering others. It's about anchoring yourself so firmly that no one else can pull you off balance. And once you learn to do that, you'll find that most arguments don't need to be won with force. They're won with presence. There's a reason you remember certain lines long after a movie ends, or why a song lyric gets stuck in your head even when you weren't trying to memorize it. It's repetition. Our brains are wired to hold on to what they hear more than once. Lawyers know this better than anyone. In a courtroom, they don't just make their strongest point once and hope it sticks. They circle back to it over and over in different ways until the jury can't forget it. They know that repetition isn't redundancy, it's reinforcement. And in your daily conversations, repetition can be one of the most effective tools you use, especially when you need your words to cut through noise and stay remembered. The challenge in heated conversations is that emotions make people stop listening. They're not really hearing you, they're preparing their next response. That's why when you make a single point, it often flies past them. But if you repeat it calmly, consistently, it begins to sink in. For example, if someone keeps accusing you unfairly, you don't need 10 different explanations. You need one calm, repeated truth. If they say, "You don't care about me," you can respond with, "I do care about you, and I want us to understand each other." And when they circle back again, you don't escalate. You repeat, "I do care about you, and I want us to understand each other." Eventually, the consistency breaks through the chaos. You're no longer fueling the fire with new arguments, you're standing firm on one clear truth. Repetition is powerful because it sends two messages at once. First, it makes your point unforgettable. Second, it shows that you're steady and unshaken. If you repeat calmly, you demonstrate self-control. You're not dragged into the whirlwind of accusations or distractions. You're holding your ground like a rock while the storm rages around you. That kind of steadiness is hard to argue with. Think about how often arguments spiral because both people keep bringing up new points. One person says, "You didn't call me back." The other fires back, "Well, you didn't show up last week." Then it becomes, "You always do this." "Well, you never do that." Turns into a laundry list of grievances and nothing gets solved. Repetition stops that spiral. Instead of chasing every new point, you calmly bring it back to one line. "I hear you, but what matters most is that I care about us and I want to fix this." Over and over. That doesn't mean you ignore what they say. It means you refuse to let the conversation explode in 10 directions. You anchor it to what matters. Here's another example. Imagine you're negotiating at work. Maybe your boss says, "We just don't have the budget for a raise right now." Instead of arguing from 10 different angles, you might repeat calmly throughout the conversation, "I understand the budget is tight, but I believe the value I bring deserves to be recognized." Each time, you phrase it respectfully, but you bring it back to that same truth. By the end, that sentence is what lingers in their mind. Not all the details, not the back and forth, but the repeated message you carried like a drumbeat. Repetition also works with children. Any parent knows that in emotional moments, kids don't process lectures. They hear tone more than words. If you argue, they argue louder. But if you calmly repeat one guiding line, it begins to sink in. A child shouting, "I hate you," can make any parent's blood boil. The instinct is to argue, punish, defend. But imagine instead you respond, "I love you, and I'm here." The child shouts again, "You don't care about me." You repeat, "I love you, and I'm here." At first, they resist it. But slowly, your steady repetition chips away at the storm. They realize you're not matching their chaos, you're holding your ground in love. That consistency creates safety, and safety always wins over anger. It's important, though, to understand that repetition must be calm, not combative. Yelling the same phrase louder each time doesn't work. That just escalates the fight. The power of repetition comes from its steadiness. You're not trying to overwhelm the other person with volume. You're trying to impress the truth on their heart by showing you're unshaken. Think of it like waves against a rock. Each wave alone isn't powerful, but the steady rhythm shapes the stone over time. Repetition also protects you from being baited. In heated conversations, people often throw out emotional hooks to drag you into side battles. If you chase every hook, you'll get exhausted. But if you stick to one repeated line, you avoid the trap. For example, in a conflict with a friend, they may throw insult after insult. Instead of taking the bait, you repeat calmly, "I want us to solve this, not fight about it," over and over. Eventually, they either calm down to match your steadiness or they realize they can't pull you into the mud. Either way, you've kept your dignity intact. The truth is, most conversations aren't about winning a single dramatic point. They're about leaving the other person with something they can't shake off. Repetition makes sure they remember what matters. When the argument is over, when the emotions have cooled, when they replay the conversation in their mind, your repeated line will echo. That's the gift of repetition. It lingers long after the noise has faded. So, when the heat rises and you're tempted to throw every defense you can think of, don't pick one truth, one sentence that captures your heart, and repeat it calmly, over and over, like a steady heartbeat. Because while emotions scream loud, it's the quiet, consistent rhythm of repetition that gets remembered. And in the end, being remembered is far more powerful than winning the loudest point in the moment. At the end of the day, every conversation you step into is a kind of courtroom. Not with robes and gavels, but with emotions, opinions, and decisions that matter. And just like in a courtroom, the person who keeps their cool, uses strategy, and communicates with intention is the one who walks away with influence, not regret. That's what these 6 tricks give you. The ability to stay calm with silence, to guide the direction with framing, to make your words unforgettable with repetition, to steer away from chaos with redirection, to uncover truth with questions, and to stand taller with confidence in your presence. These aren't gimmicks, they're principles. And when you practice them, you stop reacting and start leading. You stop getting pulled into pointless arguments and start creating meaningful conversations. The people around you notice it too. They feel safer, they feel heard, and they see you as someone who can handle pressure without losing control. So here's the real challenge. Don't just treat these tricks as interesting ideas, put them to work. The next time someone throws anger at you, pause. The next time you feel cornered, frame the conversation. When emotions run high, repeat your truth. When the discussion spirals, redirect. When the other person attacks, ask a question. And in every single moment, hold yourself with confidence. If you can do that, you'll discover what every great lawyer already knows. You don't win by shouting the loudest or by collecting the most points. You win by staying calm, clear, and consistent. You win by making the other person feel like they've been understood, even when you don't agree. And when you do that, you'll find that conversations that used to drain you now become opportunities to connect, to persuade, and to lead. Because the truth is simple. Life will keep handing you trials. Every day, every relationship, every conflict. But with these tools, you won't just survive those trials, you'll walk out stronger, steadier, and respected. And that's not just a courtroom victory, that's a life victory.